Okay. All right. So welcome everybody. I'm so happy to be back in these very unusual times. But today what we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through how we're going to progress this term in this course, your final semester for most of you. And this is called the Reflective Practitioner. So anyone who had me for seminar, and a lot of you did, this is a bit of an extension to this idea of reflective practice. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through basically the expectations and how I'm going to be available to you in this online course. I am not going to hold regular classes, but there will be times where I will be available every week at this time for email questions. If you want to ask me something immediately, this is where I'm going to be available to you at this time. And I am also going to hold these kinds of sessions, particularly around times where there are assignments or things that come up when it's time to talk about the e-portfolio. So we may not have a virtual call every week, but for sure we'll have one a couple times a month. And will really depend on how you're feeling about the course and how I've set it up. And if there's lots of questions, then I'll make myself available to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the course and the expectations as I would do in our normal first class. And then what I want you to do is make sure that if you have any questions that you pop them into the chat area, because we'll come back to them, or when we get to the question time period, you can use your mic, okay? And I'm using WebEx right now. I will probably be using Zoom. Fanshaw's been getting us corporate accounts. The reason why I'm going to use that is because Bongo only allows a few cameras at a time. And I want to be able to see your faces. So you're welcome to use your camera in these sessions because I'm using WebEx, which is a little bit more fulsome. And I probably will be switching to Zoom, which a lot of you are familiar with, because it gives us a little bit more capacity to do things like breakout rooms if we want to do something online. I have set this course up in an online fashion, not virtual online, but online. So it's set up so you can work through most of the content without me teaching you it. Having said that, that's not necessarily what you're hoping for, but because of COVID, we're going to be doing it in this fashion as you are with all of your other classes. So what I'm going to do is just open up the content, go into the content, and I always start my classes, as you know from last semester, with acknowledging, and I'm going to go under week 1. The land that we're on, and as part of my contribution to truth and reconciliation. As a settler, I make sure that I honor the fact that we are living and working and learning on Indigenous lands. And so I just want you to take a moment to read what I've written. I don't necessarily like to read land acknowledgement, but I like us to think about the relationship that we have with the land and with our Indigenous folks. On September 30th, as well as Orange Shirt Day, where that was set up to recognize the fact that when a young boy entered into residential school, he had an orange shirt, and the folks took that shirt away from him as part of him living in the residential school. So on September 30th, there's something called Orange Shirt Day. I will post something in the the announcements because it happens to fall during this class time. And so if you have an orange shirt, wear it on September 30th to acknowledge the fact that all children have a right to wear whatever color shirt they want. And we as settlers to this land need to also do our part in terms of acknowledging the important contributions of Indigenous peoples. So I'll just stop for a minute and let you read that. So one of the important things in online learning, and you all are familiar with Fanch Online, so this shouldn't be a challenging thing, is that you actually have to go in and read the content each week and stay on top of the content. One of the things that I've done is I've populated your calendar. And this was something I wasn't always familiar with, but if you go into the calendar, you can actually pull up a list. And in that list, you'll be able to see all the dates of things that are going to happen. And so if you're the kind of person who needs to track, you can go in the calendar and you can actually find a list. And I have every single due date. Now you'll see a lot of discussions. Those act as your weekly, what would have been a weekly in-class writing. And so that's why there's many of them, because after each class, I want you to do a piece of reflective writing. And so you are in small groups, so it's not a full class. And I'm going to ask that you do that writing. So of course, where would you find the information about those writings? They're going to be in the content. So if you're not sure what you're supposed to be writing about, then you need to go back through that week's content. So if you'll notice, I've got the due dates, which means there's a discussion for this week, and I'm giving you exactly a week, but you'll notice I made all of them 10 p.m. So it's not during your class time, because I also recognize that we are in unusual times. As much as we want to think this is business as usual or learning as usual, it is not. Many of you have children at home who have chosen not to send your children to school. We don't know if children are going to stay in school. And we're in the beginning of a pandemic. And the reason why I say the beginning is because there is lots of conversation that this is going to continue all the way through 2021. So in order for me to survive, I'm saying we're in the beginning of the pandemic rather than the middle or the end. We're in the beginning. And so that's my way of managing. And I know that some of us, including me, sometimes are more impatient because of what we've been going through. There's a lot of uncertainty. And so I'm certainly going to be patient with you, as I hope you will be patient with me. I really want this to be a positive learning experience for everyone, because it's important for me that you have the tools and skills when you're finished this term to go out and be wonderful educators working with our youngest learners. So as you can see, I have, and that was a long-winded response to why I chose 10 p.m. Having said that, I did choose 4 p.m. for all of your assignments, because these are assignments that you are working on not just in the moment. Discussion forums happen each week related to class. Obviously, I don't have a discussion forum the weeks that you have assignments due, but you'll notice there are many discussions almost every week. This semester is only 13 weeks, not our traditional 14. And as you know, you're always curious about what do I have to do to be successful in this course. And those of you who know me hopefully know that I strive to be as clear and as straightforward. I've laid everything out for you Everything is visible for you. From a pedagogical point of view, there are pros and cons to having everything visible. For some people, it's overwhelming, so don't look ahead. Don't look ahead if it's really overwhelming. But for someone like me, I like that list in the calendar. I like to be able to see what's expected of me from week to week. And also, I know as mature students, many of you, you'll know if you've got other things coming up. Plus, you also know what's happening in your other courses. So you might want to work ahead in one course. Keep in mind that the discussions are happening during that particular week. And part of what I'm going to be looking at is, are you responding to your peers? So there is a timing around that content, but you're welcome to work ahead within the course as much as you want. There are, I think you'll recognize the setup that I have. My templates are a little bit different than most of them because I am using the online template. Starting this September, before we knew we were going to be virtually online, we actually started the ECE program totally online for a group of students. Regardless of COVID, we have a group of ECE students now who are learning completely online because we recognized that that was something that some people wanted. So I'm using that template with you. I've used it a couple semesters and gotten some feedback. So that's why it might look different and hopefully is user-friendly for you. So what I have along the side is obviously there is an academic integrity quiz that's going to give you a bonus mark if you complete it. Each semester, we like students to complete this academic integrity model because, and of course it's optional, but it's worth 1 mark if you complete it, just to remind us of that integrity and submitting of your own work. And again, my experience is that students who submit work that may not be their own or where they don't cite properly, and I will be uploading the new APA formatting process. But I think typically that happens when you're under stress. You've left an assignment too long. And so part of what I want you to do today, and most of today's content, is really just familiarizing yourself with the course and get you thinking about the topic of reflective writing. So you'll notice that there are 4 assignments. The first one is a think, feel, act critical reflection. The second one, you're going to be reflecting on an environment using a video and a tool. It's called the global assessment. The third one is your portfolio, and you're going to be doing that in a presentation format in a discussion form in a small group. So it's going to be virtual. It's really neat. You're going to share the link with your small group to your ePortfolio, and then you're going to also share a little 700, 500 word story about who you are as an early child educator. So in fact, it's just a discussion board where you're going to say, who am I as an early child educator? Here's my ePortfolio. Now ask me a question about my ePortfolio. So that's going to be at the very end of the course. It's going to be set up in the discussion forum. So it's going to be far less stressful than if you were doing a group interview at the college. So you'll probably appreciate the fact that we're online because I don't think it'll be as intimidating just sharing a story of yourself in words and then a link to your portfolio. The fourth assignment is those weekly writings. So they're going to be worth a small percentage each week. So what I want you to do is go in, and I'm not going to explain any of the assignments today because 1, I don't want to overwhelm you, and 2, I want you to take the time to familiarize yourself with the course and have a look. So you'll see that, and I'll just open up the first one. so that you can see how I've structured your assignments. I've got I've got the instructions. I've got a PDF of it. I tell you how to submit it. There's a grading rubric. I give you a sample to have a look at. There's your resources. There's a video channel, APA, and then there's some other examples there. What I will do is I will go over the assignment, one of the virtual classes coming up, and I will videotape that conversation that we're having, and I will post it in this assignment place as well. But you'll see that it's pretty straightforward. The most important thing is that you're going to access that Think, Feel, Act document. And you're going to choose one of those sections that you want to further explore, except for these two sections, the environment as a third teacher and calm, alert, and happy, because those two sections you've covered quite a bit in other courses. And then you're going to write a 500-word plan of action and how you're going to share this topic with classmates or colleague, but you're also going to want to make sure that you connect it to how does learning happen. So that's the first assignment that's due, I believe, week 6. So in the next couple weeks, I will have a time between 12 and 1 where my responsibility will be to review it again. But you'll notice that you have a class where you're going to do a little group assignment where you're going to review the document together and decide which section you want to explore. So is it inclusion? Is it pedagogical documentation? Is it pedagogical leadership? Which one of those areas do I know something about, but I'd like to research a little more? And that's what you're going to write about, okay? And I think for me, this assignment just gets you to familiarize yourself more deeply with that document, because I know for most of us, we're going to read documents because we have something graded assigned to it. So that's going to be your first assignment. And it's really only in total 3 to 4 pages. It's worth 20%. And it's just going to let you dip into that document a little bit more. And is everybody still hearing me okay? Okay, good. Because someone was saying they couldn't hear me. You'd let me know if you can't hear me. So what I wanted to do was really just show you how I've set up the course and what are some of the components. So I'm going to go into, where did my course go? There we go. It's a bit slow. I'm going to go into the discussion area. And I believe you should be able to see this. And actually, maybe I'll put it on student view, because then it helps me see what you see, because it's a very different view for me. So I put it on student view, and this is what you're going to see under discussions. And you'll recognize the instructions. They're very similar to the discussion board from last term. This form's worth 30% of your final grade. You're expected to make 1 original post and respond to 2 peers. And any peer that responds to you, it'd be great if you respond back. The forum will have identified deadlines. So they're not open. They're open for 1 week, okay, until 10 p.m. A little bit of feedback on what you might say. I see a typo there. I'll have to fix. But the course calendar will list when the discussions are available and when it's due. So the first one has been available since Monday, and it's going to be due at next Wednesday at 10 p.m. Okay? Write your response to. What is reflection versus thinking? How can I make my reflective thinking intentional? And how did viewing this week's video promote reflective thought, or did it? Okay? And as always, I don't allow you to see other people's posts until you post. And there's a really good pedagogical reason why I do that. Because I don't want you to be influenced about what other people are thinking in the beginning. And this is reflective writing. So I'm not looking for an exact response. I'm looking for what you're thinking about this topic. So don't be afraid that your answer isn't what I was looking for. And say you're totally way off. Then that's how you're going to respond to a peer and say, wow, I didn't interpret that question the same way you did. Thanks for sharing that, because now I'm seeing this thinking in a very different way. So again, there's no right or wrong. And this is what makes being a reflective practitioner a little bit different than thinking about academic writing. I'm asking you to reflect. So in my mind, there's no wrong answer. In my mind, it's what are you thinking when I ask you these questions? What did you hear? Maybe you didn't understand it. Write that, right? And then when you read other people's responses, that's going to give you a different perspective. And that's the whole point. Remember last semester when we did our reflective writing and we had, that opportunity to discuss with peers, rewatch something or rethink, and then we wrote. This is what I'm wanting you to do in the discussion forum. So that's why I have you in small groups. They're random groups, which means you're going to be with different people each week. And again, I did that intentionally so that you will be able to get the perspective of all your peers. I believe you're in groups of 10, so they're not really small groups, just in case, because sometimes people start off writing a lot of responses and being intentional. Remember that this work is worth 30% of your grade. Okay, so again, you might be feeling a little overwhelming because you're hearing about what's expected for each course and you're trying to figure out how to manage it all. My advice to you would be, look at that list, start, even making yourself a little calendar about when you're going to do what work for each course. I did my undergrad and my master's all online, so I certainly understand learning in an online format. And I know not all of us do this very well. You have to be disciplined, and many of us have a lot of distractions. And so please make sure that you know the kind of learner you are. Right now, I'm seeing a few faces, which I'm so grateful for, but most people haven't got their cameras on. That's totally fine, totally fine. But what I want to say is don't hide behind the computer, and if you're feeling overwhelmed and feeling that you're getting behind, don't wait. Don't wait for that midterm grade. Don't wait to seek advice, because really, personally, and I know all of the faculty want you to be successful and want you to get the most out of your learning environment this semester. So when it comes to today's content, really what I want you to do is spend some time looking over how I've set up the course. Does it make sense to you? Going in and seeing that I've got each week there. I haven't added dates yet to everything, but I will go in and do that. I did obviously put today's date, but I know, fortunately, we don't have any gaps. We don't have any holidays. We're going right through 13 weeks. So, next week is the 30th. The following week, week 3, is when I will make myself available. It's the Think, Feel, Act class. And that's when I'll go into some detail about that assignment. And so I will state that. I will state that in an email, and I will make myself available virtually that week for sure. So I will go through the content and put all the dates, and I'll also put in the calendar all the times I'll be available virtually. But even if we're not here virtually, like next week, I probably am not going to be available virtually. Maybe we'll do every other week, but I will be on my computer from 12 to 3. So if you run into problems, okay? I'm not planning on doing a class every week because I've set up the course to be a little bit more independent. But I will have specific times where we'll meet in this virtual format, and week 3 will be one of them. So I'm going to put those things in the calendar so that you can also plan. Anytime the content is about an assignment, be sure that we'll do a virtual class, okay? And so I will always be available to you during class time, whether we're in this format or whether you're working at the content. And hopefully that way you won't have to be left too long with a question, okay? And really, I'm hopeful that once you take the time to look over the content, you'll see that it's set out fairly straightforward. So let's just go under this week's content and have a look at how each week is set up. So there's a lesson introduction for each week. And I've tried to make them visually pleasing. That's the one thing about learning online is got to use a lot more pictures to keep us excited. So there's always a lesson introduction and what you're supposed to learn, and then a content page. And so that's all that's going to be under each week, so that I've done it in a way that's hopefully easy to follow. You'll see here that I want you to go to the Getting Starting section, and you can click on that, review the assignments, which we've done a little bit of. You're going to watch a video. And this is a review from a video last semester. It's a rewatch with intention, and I actually call it a rewatch because I think the more time we get away from content, the more we go back to it. Here's a module that you're going to follow, and it's set up very nicely. We call this H5P. It's a new program we're using in the online forum. And this was actually created by our colleagues in Niagara. And so you're just going to walk through this content. It's a little bit slow because we're all online, and I've got the video up. But so you'll walk through this content, and it's great because you just click next, 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 okay? And that's this week's content. So you need to go through that. Here's some reflexive questions. And then each week I have a little box here. Don't forget to go to the discussion forum and post a piece of writing. So I'm hoping for you that that is easy to follow, makes sense, everything you need to do. The bottom line is this is a 3-hour course. You should be spending at least 3 hours on the content. And obviously as assignments come up, it's going to be a little bit more. But I've tried to make it very user-friendly, not cluttered, not too many things to click on, and hopefully you'll find that it does actually do that. If it's not making sense to you, I'll know because I'll get those questions, okay? So obviously you're going to go on discussions, and you're going to also, when you go into submission folders, the other thing I do is I also have your due dates here. So you'll notice there's only 2 submissions because your weekly reflections are in the discussion forum, and so is your e-portfolio. It's going to be in the discussion forum. And there'll be a rubric attached. So you'll see week 6, the due date, your assignments due week 10, and your portfolio, I believe, is due week 13. So you've got 6, 10, and 13, but then each week you have those discussions which are reflective writing. So that's all I wanted to cover today. as I said, I'm going to make sure that you the calendar, because everything's there. The integrity quiz, which is a bonus mark, is due on the 5th, so it'll close after that. So that you can see that most weeks I'm going to ask for a discussion forum and a reflection. And really, that's your opportunity to process what the content is and have a conversation with your peers. The other thing that I'll just show you is there's actually, I think I clicked on the wrong button. I'm just going to go out of student and go into me. There actually are some groups that you probably can't see in the discussion, and this is some group activity that I want you to do prior to posting in the discussion forum. And so, sorry about that. Just going to scoot down to groups. So there are some group activities in week 4, 5, 8, and 9. Okay. Actually, except for week 4, they're all hidden, 9 and 12, because I wanted you to be able to see that this is a place where you can start having some communication with each other if you've got questions. And then there's actually group work, and you're all assigned to a group to look at. And when you click on it, there will be an article, and you're going to look through the article and have a conversation. And this article is called The Simple Joy of Writing. Okay? And so what I want you to do as part of that content is have a look at that article and talk with your it's like a small group in class. Obviously, it doesn't have to be done in time, but it would be great if it's done within a day or two of when the class was scheduled, because that's going to contribute to your learning and the reflective writing that you put in your discussion. So I've tried to make it interactive a little bit so that you'll get to know each other. I think most of you, some of you are in this group that weren't in this group before. You might be new to the class. So I'm hoping that in putting you in smaller groups for the reflective writing, for doing some group work along the way. So I'm going to check in with you. I'm going to be available to you next week, and then I'm going to check in with you virtually again week 3. And if it works out that way, that maybe we'll just do every other week where we'll have a virtual check-in. And again, that's really going to depend on how you're feeling about the content. So I'm going to stop talking. Yes, there is no mandatory class for this course because I have set it up as a traditional online course, whereas most of your other courses aren't. And that's only because I was in a research project and I'm doing work to get an online program up and running. And I have tried this course out as an online course before, and I've made changes to it. But I do also know that you didn't initially sign up to be an online learner. So my obligation to you is to be available to you each week, and I will be available to you every other week or each week if needed virtually. Okay. The other thing we can do is you can ask to have an appointment with me, and we can have a virtual meeting one-on-one like this. I can do that. Sometimes, obviously, I couldn't do it we have about 40 students in this course, but I certainly can have a one-to-one WebEx meeting with you. I have what I call a meeting room with this as a coordinator, so we can have a chit-chat just like this. If you're running into some trouble around the content. And so we could certainly set that up. So as long as you get your assignments in on time and due dates, attending class is not mandatory. Having said that, I'm not going to be answering 45 emails around assignment time if you choose not to be present when I go over the assignment. And the first assignment, Think, Feel, Act, will be week 3. And so I will be going over that assignment, videotaping it, and posting it and I'm making myself available during that time. So if you have questions, that's when you try to make yourself available. And I'll be very clear in the announcements. This week's check-in is specifically around Think, Feel, Act and your assignment. Make sure you're there if you need to ask questions or are unclear of the expectations. So again, as a learner, you know who you are, you know your style by now, you know what you need to be successful. And so, and you know, I of course would love to see all of you each time we have a virtual class, because I too miss that connection. But I also recognize that, you know, you're going to have to pick and choose certain things. But please, if you think you have questions about things, or you're unclear, or things aren't making sense as the course goes on, please try to come to those virtual sessions, because knowing and having taught online before, that's what's going to help you make some sense to the content. So I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to see if there's any other questions that you might have. And you're welcome to take your mic off, and so that we can hear your voices if you want to ask, or you can put a question in the comment area. I do see a question that I didn't answer. Is the discussion APA with a cover page? No. This is reflective writing. And so the discussion forum, or the reflective writing, treat it as if you were doing it in class, right? Where I ask you to do a piece of reflective writing. You wouldn't be referencing it or doing a cover page. So in your discussion board, when you're doing that piece of reflective writing, obviously, if you're making a direct quote, in order not to be plagiarized, you would have to reference where that came from. But I am not looking for API. Most of the discussion forums are really written in a reflective way for you to think. How do you feel? Again, reflective writing is more about how we feel about certain things, and it's not traditionally how we think in an academic environment. The interesting thing is, starting on Thursday for the month of September till October, through Strive, I'm running a writing for reflection training for the community, and I have a group of about 20 ECEs who are going to work with me over a 5-week period to practice that skill of writing reflectively. And so this is a skill that most educators didn't learn if they went to school in the 80s and 90s, as I did. It's become a disposition or a skill for early child educators recently. The e-portfolio is going to be due the very last class. The discussion is from today's content. Each week, where it says week 1, week 2, that means it's a reference to the week of the content. So if you go into the calendar and look at the list again, do we need the books for class? Reflecting in Communities of Practice. And the environmental rating scale should not be a book listed on the book. I've taken that book off many times, and I don't know why it's on there. So you do not need the early childhood environmental rating scale. It should not be on your book list, and I hope you didn't purchase it. And why it's still there is a very, very good question. I'm hoping that you can return them, and I will be talking to the bookstore, because it's not in my course information sheet, so it should not be ordered. And the Communities of Practice, I've got some readings for that. You're going to work with a number of things in that text. So if you're going to purchase a book, that would be one. It's one that our community uses a lot. We've done a lot of training around that, reflecting in communities of practice, and I don't think it's a very expensive book. I will make sure that I get that environmental rating scale taken off. We are using a global rating scale to have you reflect. And there's a lot of controversy around using rating scales. For me, it's because they've been used inappropriately. The one book is mandatory, so you will probably need it to complete some of the content. Again, I don't think it's a very expensive book, maybe $40, $50 max. Having said that, I don't know how the cost of things have gone up, but I will make sure that that book is not on your book list going forward. So I think it's really important to take a look at what's expected in the course. Any discussion does not need books. You're very quiet. I'm gonna take the stop sharing screen off so I can see your faces bigger. And then if you want to share your video right now, it'd be great so I can see your smiling faces. I'm so happy to see you. Hi. And I really hope that you find, yes, Reflecting Communities is the right book. I'm so happy to see you, and I hope that this turns out to be a wonderful semester for you. None of us wanted this to be this way. But as I said, I did all my undergrad and my master's online, and I think we can learn online, and it can be rich, and it can be meaningful. The thing is that you have to do the heavy lifting, right? And you can't rely on me telling you exactly what to do. You've got to read. And what I always say to students, you've got to go in and open up each week's content. And after you've done that and you still have questions, there's a comment area in the course where you can post things. I'm not going to go in there and check because it's a peer-to-peer, but if I see there's a lot of activity in there and somebody is not getting the answer they need, use that course, use your FOL to support each other. Just know that whatever comments you put in there, I'm going to see, and I'm happy to respond if you're not getting the answer. After you've done that, if you still need support, that's when you can email me or make sure you're available during those virtual classes. So I'm going to give you the next week to get your toes dipped in the course, do that first discussion. I'm going to see you virtually week 3, and then you're going to tell me that week if everything's making sense, if it's okay, if you're overwhelmed. You probably should be overwhelmed right now because you've had, all of your courses, and you're probably trying to figure out how to manage all that. And that's okay. That's okay. But you would have been overwhelmed if we were physically in class. It's just a little bit different overwhelming because we're virtually and we're not able to say, that's too much, stop talking, Cheryl, you're going too fast. So I'm going to give you the time in the next week to really familiarize yourself with the course, with the assignments, dip your toes, get that first discussion done, and then we will check in week 3 again. I'm going to put it in the calendar. I'm going to put it in the announcement about what we're going to be doing. And I'd really love to see you make yourself available. It's not going to be more than an hour because I know virtual is very different. because you're looking at a screen, you're listening, you're typing, you're reading, and it really does, our brain doesn't do really well on too long a time. So I'm going to make our virtual time about an hour. But again, next Wednesday from 12 to 3, you have questions, things you have to ask. I'm on my computer, so you can get instant feedback from me during class time. That's my commitment to you, is that I will always be available during this class time. So even when we log off now, I'm on my computer, I'm here, and typically if you're emailing during class time, you're going to hear from me almost immediately. But like every other course, sometimes it takes up to 24 hours for me to respond, but I try not to. If I'm getting a lot of questions that I think are found in the course, I might say, you can find that under week 4 content. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because I really want you to know what's in the course, know where to find things, so that you don't have to make it up or imagine it. You can actually read it and it makes sense to you. So unless there's any other questions, welcome back. Fall 2020, it's going to be a year to remember. And I'm so happy to be teaching you all this term, and I know we're going to get through this and be successful, and I will do whatever I can to help you be successful. You're going to do the heavy lifting. So unless there's anything else, if there's any more questions, put on your mic. I'm going to stay around for about 5-10 minutes to make sure you don't have a delayed question. So you can log off. Again, my commitment to you is to put the dates on the content and to put in the calendar our next virtual time. And I will be available to you every Wednesday from 12 to 3, whether we're virtual or whether we're not. Okay? Take care. I miss seeing you all. I wish I could see you in person. Hugs. Hugs. Yeah. Look at your smiling faces. Yay. Bye. Take care.